Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Resilient Advisor Show. My name is Jay Coulter, and joining me today for the first in a new series called How I Serve, well, I'll interview top financial advisors, and they will break down how they built their business and how they serve their clients, is my friend Vance Barse. I met today's guest about a year and a half ago on social media, like most people in our industry start meeting people. And then we were at the T3 conference at the beginning of last year, and Vance and I had a chance to meet in person. Vance, that is the last time I went to a conference in person. How about yourself?
Guilty as charged.
Yeah. Do you think we're ever going to get back to conferences?
If there was one next week, I would certainly hop on a plane and attend. No problem. I do think that in today's litigious society, it's looking probably more October or September versus, say, June or July, but we'll see.
Yeah, I think you're right. Well, I appreciate you being my first guest in this new series on the Resilient Advisor Show. And the premise is really simple. There are fantastic financial advisors out there that are willing to share their story with other advisors about how they grew their business and also their unique value proposition on how they work with clients. So let's start at the beginning. Tell us about how you got into this industry even before you became a financial advisor.
You know, life, Jay, is what happens to us as we are trying to implement our plans. And I never woke up and went, I know, I want to be a fiduciary financial planner. Never happened. Back in 2006 and 2007, I remember everyone was a mortgage advisor. And my then boss suggested that I speak with a guy who was in what he termed the edge fund business. And that person was John Sant, who founded a company called Altegris, which was a platform of feeder funds essentially into large, well-known institutional alternative investment manager names. Paulson, SAC, Brevin Howard, Citadel, Winton, et cetera, et cetera.
Small names in the industry. Small boutique names that nobody's heard of. Yeah.
Google them. So my job was to travel around the country and consult financial advisors on how to implement those managers in the broader context of a portfolio for those financial advisors, high net worth and ultra high net worth clients. And one of the unintended products of that career, which spanned about a decade, was learning so much about what financial advisors do, but way more importantly, what so many of them don't do, because I used to see it all the time. Mm-hmm. I wasn't just meeting with advisors or their research teams. I would very commonly meet with the advisors and clients because it was more of a technical explanation when you're dealing with managers with those types of strategies. So my grandmother ended up having a massive stroke. And I had known for a couple years before that point in time that I was tired of consulting financial advisors and living out of a suitcase. So I took it upon myself to resign from that career, go to West Virginia, of all places, live in her home and spend time with her in the nursing home every day until she eventually transitioned to the spiritual side. At which point, Jay, I think I did what so many of us in the industry want to do. I hopped on a Harley and I rode around the country for about a year and with this great big beard and really long hair, and I would do it again in a heartbeat, except I'm now married with 2 children. So that's off the table.
That would make it a lot harder, obviously. Now, do you have pictures of your days in that beard?
Not that I share publicly, but I am happy to share those offline for you or any of our mutual industry contacts that have an interest in seeing.
Since I knew that story in advance, I should have asked for a picture because that would have made this episode a lot more interesting. But
I tell you what, if someone wants to see the version of me with long hair, tweet to me at Vance Barse, show me the hair, bro, and I'll go ahead and put up some pictures. But to answer your question, I ended up moving back to San Diego, and I put a Facebook post up asking if there were any of the industry contacts that knew of an advisor that wanted to sell all or part of her or his practice. And Wayne Bloom, the Commonwealth CEO, reached out and he said, "You meet none of our requirements. We'd love to have you." And that's how I became a financial advisor.
That's awesome. Before we start heading down that path, John Ellert on Twitter tweeted out that those are some good pictures. He must have some inside pool there. If anybody would like to ask Vance a question or give him a hard time, if you're watching live on Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, or Facebook, post your question or your comment to Vance in the comment section, and I will pull it through here to the studio. Let's go back to your days at the alternative shop before we move forward, because I had a similar experience. I spent most of my career at Lehman Brothers before I started consulting with advisors 5 years ago, and my lens was purely in the asset management side, whether it was traditional or alternative, and it really gave me a wide look into the different types of businesses, even though I was skewed more to the wirehouse side, and then some of the lack of competencies out there as it relates to financial advisors and gaps that could be filled. What have you taken from your days as a consultant and put into your practice today?
First and foremost, the understanding of what so many advisors don't implement from a strategy standpoint. You take a business owner, you take a real estate owner, you take an owner of business and real estate. So much of our industry is driven toward trying to onboard the multimillionaire type profile, and they focus on asset management. Very seldom do I find a family or an individual that really wants to get into the nuances of the so-called mousetrap. Where the value is that is tangible is understanding what planning gaps exist in an overall estate and financial plan, and focusing on filling those gaps where other advisors often fall short in so doing.
You said that very articulately. The bottom line is I'm 47. I believe you're 41 here recently. Most folks our age and older, they just focus on asset management, where the value is in the planning. And as we'll dig into, that's how you've built this great business you have. All right. So I interrupted you. You reached out. Commonwealth said, you don't fit our profile. We're going to take some type of flyer on you. And you were able to start your business there. Tell us about day one.
Day one was a great big mystery, because I went, okay, I want to take what I learned and implement it for families that could be underserved. And Commonwealth was nice enough to say, you meet none of our requirements, but we'll go ahead and give you a home because we've known you for years. And with a great big hat tip to Wayne Bloom, I hope you see this at some point. And I worked from my house. And then all of a sudden, Jay, I went, what do I do? What do I say? To whom do I say it? How do I say it? Because I had this near decade of experience in consulting private wealth managers and largely their research analysts on how to manage money for high net worth and ultra high net worth families. But I had never really had the conversation around family heritage statements, multi-generational planning, asset preservation, true wealth transfer, tax minimization, et cetera, et cetera. So I very quickly started to read voraciously and study as much as I could about how to solve the complex problems that so many of these families have. And it took some time. For any advisors out there that are in their first couple of 3 years and feel like it's really hard, I want to validate your feelings. It is very hard. You take someone that you don't know and you need to present value to them, build trust so that they share information with you. And I have yet to meet someone who doesn't rave about their financial advisor, because typically what do? They look at the statement and over time, their account value goes up. And if that's the basis on how they value an advisor, then they are likely going to be happy. So it took some time, Jay, but things have evolved since then.
So what year did you make this transition to serving families?
2015.
2015. Okay. Now, given the fact that you had years of over a decade worth of experience beforehand, you've been through a bear market before. I have a concern because I don't consider last year a bear market. That was a market correction for a short period of time. That there are a lot of seasoned advisors who've been serving clients for a decade or more that haven't been through a protracted, prolonged bear market. So I find that the best way to help mitigate some of the business risk and the client experience risk is through financial planning. You've obviously started leading with that. And as we'll get into, that's the core part of your value proposition. But when you're starting from scratch, that's incredibly difficult. What are those conversations look like to those cold prospects, given what you just said? You're not talking about investments, you're talking about planning.
I focus on what I used to do so that they understand contextually that, I'm not the so-called stereotypical financial planner who came up through whatever avenue, whether it started as life insurance or in a wirehouse and went independent, et cetera. I explained that, I invested 10 years of my life, give or take, in traveling the country and consulting advisors. And when a family has a financial planner or advisor, and they simply want to understand what they might not be getting currently from that planner or wealth management team, I introduced my model, which changed, by the way, back in 2019. I realized somewhat slowly that I can't pay my bills, Jay, by being in the business of free financial planning, right? People can Google that which they can Google, and I was focusing on the wrong things for too long. So I changed the model such that I will happily invest 15 minutes of time to explain who I am, what my firm represents, and our value proposition. The overwhelming corpus of families that we have onboarded since then had a financial advisor or planner, often for decades plus. And I say quite simply, we are available for a flat cost to look at investment accounts, tax returns, estate planning documents, essentially everything that involves a dollar sign in the front of it, and outline for you the planning gaps that exist that you likely are unaware of. You never even have to tell your current financial advisor or wealth management firm that we're involved. So your takeaway is you spend a flat cost in exchange for understanding the planning gaps that you have, so that then you can go back to your current planning team and have them implemented. And what has evolved is quite frequently the families will, at the end of that consulting arrangement, go, well, you know everything about me now. I now have a family heritage statement and an investment policy statement, and I understand the tax inefficiencies. And you hopped on the phone with my estate planner and my CPA. What would you charge to manage the assets? And that's how the firm has grown subsequent to that change that was made in 2019.
Excellent. I really love that model. That's actually the first time I've heard that or spoken with an advisor that has executed on that successfully. I am curious, and I know I'm going to get the questions after the case or after the show. What's a family heritage statement?
So family heritage statement is the product of multiple interviews with typically multiple generations in the family. Many of the clients served by the firm are female-only or female-headed households. Whether it's female-headed or female-only or a married couple, if you will, we interview the matriarch and or patriarch of the family to understand truly what their core values are. Some people have deep religious conviction. Some people are very big into familial harmony. Some people look at the business or businesses that they have built and they go, here is an entity that has allowed my family to work together and we've grown it. And I don't want the very thing that has brought us together to tear us apart. And I outline what those core values are for each of those members. And subsequent to that initial interview or series of interviews, I will then meet with other members of the family tree, typically the next generation, to understand what their core values are and bridge the gap between matriarch and patriarch and next generation to help really foster that family unity so that the assets or the business or the real estate or all of the above aren't a source of conflict, such that we can maintain the integrity of the estate and keep all members in the family happy.
Excellent. So the end deliverable for folks that go through your consulting process, this initial analysis, what type of deliverable do they receive? Is it hard copy, digital?
It's both. So it will, by the way, it depends on the extent to which they have fundamental needs. And one of the things that has always baffled me about our industry is that we don't have the equivalent of the Hippocratic Oath in medicine. Market Watch interviewed me. In fact, it was Andrea Briquier about this whole concept and idea, because there's no requirement that financial advisors do what is truly and unequivocally in the best interest of their clients. I'm a steadfast proponent of the fiduciary rule, and I think it's only a matter of time, in my opinion, before we have one. But that notwithstanding, it depends on what the family's true needs are. If it's a family heritage statement and an investment policy statement, then we will leave it at that. But typically they have investable assets. We'll do a deep dive on the cost that they're paying. Jay, you're very familiar with the model of loading families into mutual funds, right? So are we managing with tax efficiency at front of mind, given the current planning that has been done on behalf of the family? Or is there room, for example, to take a non-qualified portfolio, meaning a non-retirement portfolio, and look at the different tax lots in that portfolio for the capital gains that have come in to those investment holdings over time? Are there lots that are down and lots that are up, such that we could very tax efficiently create liquidity to allow for a reallocation into much lower cost and much more tax efficient investments? And there's a lot of other stuff to it, but I don't want to take too much time.
Well, you're definitely not taking away anybody's time. Folks that are listening to this are financial advisors who are looking for ways to be competitive in their markets, and you really have a great story. Let's dig a little deeper into your business. So you're at Commonwealth, correct?
I have my firm, which is Your Dedicated Fiduciary, and we partner with Commonwealth's RIA.
Excellent.
So I don't have my Series 7, for example, because I wanted to convey to potential and current families that I don't have the ability to earn a commission on specifically investments. But yes, I partner with Commonwealth's corporate RIA.
Excellent. Tell us about your tech stack.
I've only known Commonwealth's tech stack, and in my opinion, I feel very lucky because they have a great one. So I use Investor 360, which allows me to integrate all data for a client. And this is one of the things that is provided in the onboarding process. I explain, I need estate planning documents. I need tax returns. I need business succession planning documents. All of that information is uploaded to their portal so that when they log in, it's right there at their fingertips. And I will very commonly, Jay, open up Investor 360 during client meetings so that I can pull up tax returns and estate planning documents and very specifically show why I am suggesting the planning strategies that we're discussing pursuant to a unique profile for a client. Excellent. I also use Right Capital to develop and implement financial plans. I love Right Capital because let's say we look at an estate and there might be 17 different investment properties. There might be 2 different businesses. I want to put that information in a detailed and articulate way into the system so that it can truly reflect the family's overall fact pattern.
I'm a big fan of Right Capital myself. I use it when I do plans for folks, and I find that eMoney is great, Money Guide Pro is great, and Right Capital is great. Just depends upon the type of client you're dealing with, the level of sophistication potentially. But I have not run across a situation where Right Capital did not get everything done. Have you?
I have not. And there's one other very core piece of technology that I use, which is WealthScape, offered by National Financial Services. So when a family onboards assets, particularly non-qualified assets, I'm able to convert the average cost basis of that portfolio of non-qualified assets to a tax-specific cost basis. And that allows me to go in at any point during the year, maybe there's a market sell-off, maybe it's year end, and I can look very specifically at the individual tax lots for things like tax loss harvesting, tax bracket management. And I don't know if I shared this before, but in my opinion, all prudent planning decisions should really be driven by an understanding of the tax return. So when you think about folks that go to a medical specialist, maybe it's an orthopedic surgeon, or they have some type of medical procedure, what does that specialist always ask for? The general health history, which is from their general practitioner. So I tell families, if you think about this analogy, your CPA is your GP. And I'm no neurosurgeon or anything like that, but I do want to understand the general health history, if you will, so that I can understand the strategies for which you are eligible that have not been implemented thus far.
I like that analogy. And Vance, I'm pretty sure I'm going to steal it and teach other advisors how to use it. You shouldn't have shared it on the air.
Hey, you know, the only downside with sharing free information in terms of what is working, whether it's me or any other practice, is literally non-existent. Because if there's something that's working for an advisor in San Diego or one that's working for an advisor in Boston, are we really going to be stepping on each other's toes? I'm going to go with probably not. And I'm very, very lucky, Jay, to have relationships with advisors, many of whom I've met through Twitter, Nina, Ryan, Taylor, Jay, and I can go on and on and on. And we share ideas. What's working? What are you seeing that's bringing value to the families that you're serving? Is there a particular type of marketing strategy that's worked for you? And what's really fascinating to me is that generationally, I see advisors who are under the age of, call it 45, sharing collaboratively with this idea of let's build the collective good and bring value, more value to the public, versus the sort of classic, I have to compete against all of my peers.
Excellent. Well, that's a great transition into talking about how you market. I'm going to pull up your website. I think this is just a fantastic digital deliverable. Tell us about your website and your overall marketing process.
That's a work in process because the website was just recently revamped, and I wanted to present to the public really the core message, which is we know that the only thing there are more of in the world than residential real estate agents are so-called financial advisors. And at the core of our service model, we serve as the in-house right-hand financial consultants to the families that hire us to serve in that capacity. And in my mind, it's better to give away planning ideas educationally. I wrote a book called Fiduciary Wealth Management, The Millionaire's Guide to Selecting the Right Financial Advisor. And it's important for people to know, we don't even teach financial literacy in school. So how is a very hardworking, risk-taking, successful entrepreneur supposed to know precisely what questions to ask? They typically go to their spouse or possibly a mentor or a friend and go, who do you have? Oh, I have so-and-so. This person is fantastic. I've used them for 27 years. But there's really no fundamental, foundational knowledge that people have on how to select the right financial advisor, which is why I wrote the book. And so the website was there simply to leverage SEO and serve as an educational resource for people that are looking for that type of information.
So Vance, tell advisors how you leverage that book specifically in your marketing.
Well, it's on the website for people to download for free. And whenever I meet a so-called center of influence or a family is considering retaining the firm to evaluate what planning gaps they might have, I simply send it and I say, hey, you can take my name off of this. In my opinion, here is everything that you need to know to ask or look for in your current planning so that you can make sure that you're not currently underserved.
Excellent. Now, do you have a hard copy of it or is it an ebook only deliverable?
Ebook only for now, because there's one section that I want to really expand on. And I've just found through asking current clients, which I request feedback from on the book, it's easier to have that on your phone because that's typically what we all use to search the internet, and have clickable links to, for example, articles I've written for CNBC or articles in which I've been quoted. You bring up something else, though, with the marketing. When COVID hit, I thought, what is the one thing that we all wish we could have again? That is the human connection. So while we have been unable to get together in person, many of us, we started hosting Zoom-based cooking classes. There is an executive chef who's been on Guy Fieri's television show called Grocery Games. And he's a friend from San Diego. So I called him up and I said, hey, have you ever done cooking classes? Absolutely. Have you ever done cooking classes by Zoom? Not a chance. Would you be open to hosting a cooking class by Zoom? Absolutely. And we've hosted several of these and invited clients and their friends to attend, and they've gone off, without a hitch.
That's a fantastic idea. So as we get ready to wrap this up, I came up because you're the first person I've had on this series with 4 questions that I'm going to ask every advisor. You just didn't get these in advance like everybody else will. So, but I knew you were the kind of guy who could handle this. All right. So, Vance, how would you describe your ideal client?
Fun to work with. That's it. End of tweet, right? Like, if I'm going to invest time out of my life, and the last time I checked, this isn't rehearsal for next time, right? We're all front stage and center in our lives. I would rather work with someone that might have less money than a so-called, private jet flying multi-million, you understand the stereotypical profile, right? It has to be fun and fulfilling for all parties involved. And one of the things that I promised myself when I got into this career role is that I would move forward with a mutual alignment of interests for all parties involved. So if someone has $1 million net worth or investable net worth or a $50 million net worth, in my mind, it shouldn't matter. The ideal client should be really fun to work with, and we should really enjoy bringing value to that person.
Vance, what industry trend do you have your eye on, either as through the lens of concern or something that you're optimistic about?
I'm optimistic about the implementation of a fiduciary standard that will require financial advisors to serve in that capacity and only do what is truly in the best interest of the client, regardless of opinion. So if an independent, objective party of professionals were to review the fact pattern, the decision that the advisor makes that is believed to be in the best interest of the client would in fact only be the best interest for the client.
Vance, what fintech solution could you not do without going forward in your business?
I'm sorry, Jay, I missed that. Which solution?
Yeah. Hey, Vance, which fintech solution could you not go without in your practice right now?
Wellscape and Investor 360, because it serves together as the hub of all planning processes.
All right, Vance, let's look forward 5 years. What does your dedicated fiduciary look like as a business?
150 households around the country. We're at roughly 50. There is a scale and capacity that you hit. I didn't get into this role in this industry to become one of the well-known folks or any of the well-known folks that are ultimately in the widget business, right? I'm not going to partner with PBS. I'm not going to sell widgets on QVC. I find a lot of value in working directly with other human beings and being able to see tangibly the impact that the firm is able to make. So the goal, however long it takes, is to hit 150 families around the country, and that will be it.
Awesome. Vance, thank you so much for coming on this show, the first episode of the How I Serve series. Man, you were absolutely fantastic.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, Jay. I look forward to getting together again in person when we can.
Yes.